Indonesia. Yeah, you know those travel brochures, right? Beaches, temples, the whole exotic vibe.
Right. Picture perfect.
But we're going deeper than that. Today's deep dive, it's about, well, it's a tough one, pleasure marriages.
And even calling them pleasure marriages, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, that kind of glosses over the exploitation.
Absolutely. And all our sources,
Yeah.
right off the bat, they're saying this isn't about romance, love, any of that. Not even legal marriage in Indonesia, actually.
No, not at all.
So what are we even talking about then? Let's break it down.
Okay, so people use pleasure marriage. They use nikamuta kind of interchangeably. But to be specific, nikamuta, it's this temporary marriage contract.
Temporary.
Yeah, and it comes from Shia Islam. The thing is, it's the duration. They agree on it beforehand. Could be a few hours, could even be like years.
Hold on. So it's like, okay, this marriage lasts the week, and then that's it. Done. Sounds like that could go very wrong very fast.
And that's exactly the problem. I mean, yeah, some people within Shia Islam, they say it's okay, but only like super specific situations, very strict. But honestly, even within Shia Islam, a lot of people, they think it's totally unethical.
So it's not even like a universally accepted thing.
No. A lot of Islamic scholars, doesn't matter the sect, they see it as, how do I put it, like a twisted version, you know? Open to people taking advantage, exploiting others.
So not a simple thing, right? It gets messy. But what's happening in Indonesia specifically?
Well, it's complicated, to say the least. It's happening. That much is clear.
In the shadows kind of thing.
Yeah, you could say that. Definitely goes against Indonesia's laws, that's for sure.
And that takes us to Cahaya, this LA Times article. It tells her story.
Yeah.
Puts a real face to all this.
Yeah, and sadly, her story, not that unusual. Married when she was just 13, then at 17, pushed into that first temporary marriage. Really shows you how vulnerable young women are, especially when they're poor.
17 years old.
Yeah.
And your options are so limited that this whole temporary marriage thing, it seems like the only way out.
And for a lot of women, that's the reality. Cahaya, she says she's had over 15 of these husbands, temporary, of course, tourists, almost all of them, mostly the Middle East. It's a pattern. You see it again and again in the articles we've looked at.
Desperation, poverty, it forces women into these situations.
Oh.
And let's talk about the money, because that really shows you how transactional it is.
Oh, absolutely. So Cahaya's first husband, he paid $850. But, and here's where it gets worse, after the agent, the officiant, they take their cut.
There's always a cut, right?
Always. She ended up with half. Only half.
It's like they're being exploited twice over.
Yeah.
First, they're pressured into it, and then the people who are supposed to be, like, making it official, they're taking advantage too.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. The next marriages, they earned her like $300 to $500 each. Money she needed, obviously, for her and her grandparents. They were sick, needed the help.
So it just keeps going. One thing that really stood out to me is, like, this whole thing, it's become an industry. It used to be, families involved or people you knew.
Right. Now you've got agencies. The LA Times article, it talks about how they've popped up everywhere. They're like brokers, connecting tourists.
With the women.
With the women, yeah. Women who are, let's be honest, they're not doing this because they want to. They're desperate.
It feels so deeply rooted, poverty, lack of opportunity, these cultural dynamics. It's a lot. Where do you even begin to address something like this?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? There's no quick fix here.
Yeah.
You have to understand what's really going on, the system, everything. And that's where, the articles we've been looking at, they offer some clues.
Okay, so what are they saying?
One thing that comes up a lot, it's economic empowerment. That seems to be key.
Right, because if there were other options, real options, would women even consider this?
Exactly. But creating those options, that's the challenge.
Yeah, it feels huge.
It is huge. But I don't think it's impossible. Some of the articles I mentioned, these organizations, they're working in Indonesia, like really on the ground.
What are they doing?
They're focused on, a few things. Giving women education, teaching them skills, job training. And microfinance, that's another big one, giving them loans, helping them start businesses.
So giving them tools, resources, so they don't have to rely on this.
Exactly. Breaking that cycle.
Okay, that's something. But what about the law? Indonesia doesn't even recognize these marriages, right?
Exactly. And that's the other piece of the puzzle. You need laws, strong ones, and people have to actually enforce them. Big penalties for anyone who's exploiting these women.
Agencies included.
Especially the agencies and those individuals who are profiting. Can't let them get away with it.
It's like there's this law, right? But it's just words on paper.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's not enough to have a law. You got to actually use it. But it's more than just raids and arrests. You have to change what people think.
How do you do that?
Well, you talk about it. You educate people, even religious leaders. Explain why this is wrong, ethically. And women, they have to feel safe to come forward to report this stuff without feeling ashamed.
So it's like changing the whole mindset, not just the laws.
Exactly. You have to challenge those old ways of thinking,
Yeah.
the ones that allow this to go on. And that's where education is so important.
It's about changing the story, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
there's this idea out there, this messed up idea that the women are choosing this.
Yes, like they have a choice. Our sources, they're very clear. That's not how this works.
They're trapped.
They're backed into a corner. They're doing this because they feel like they have no other option.
And it's not their fault. We have to stop blaming the victims.
100%. The blame rests solely on the people who are doing the exploiting. And it has to be a team effort, you know? Governments, those NGOs we talked about, religious leaders, regular people, everybody.
And the tourists. We can't forget about them. I mean, it's happening in Indonesia, but the demand, it's coming from somewhere else.
Absolutely. Tourists, especially from places where this whole pleasure marriage thing, they see it as normal. They need to know the truth.
It's not just a fling.
It's not. They're part of this system, whether they realize it or not. Their actions have consequences, real consequences for these women. Every woman, she deserves to make her own choices, to be safe, to be free. That's what we should be fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely. So to everyone listening, stay curious, keep asking those tough questions, and let's keep this conversation going. It matters. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you.